Good morning. When I left high school, moved home back to the Gold Coast, and then the first time I moved out of home, I moved about 3 blocks away from home, and shared a house with a bunch of blokes and one girl, and we were, I guess, striving to learn what it meant to follow Jesus as a young Christian. One of the things we loved to do was to go to each other and say, "Brother, I have a word for you." And we choose things like, as a door turns on its hinges, so a sluggard turns in his bed. Or a sluggard buries his hand in the dish. He's too lazy to bring it back to his mouth. These were some of our favourite scriptures that we love to share with one another. Maybe a little bit flippant, but at least we were reading our Bible. I guess that's the thing I'm really looking at. Excuse me. So my topic's the wise man, his temperament and actions. And I've been really noticing a lot of patriarchal language, so I didn't change it on there, but just think wise people, because it really is applicable to males and females. And first point we're talking about is he is humble, not proud. And one of the things with pride is once we realise once we realise we're full of pride, the task is to forget ourselves altogether. Lewis says, if you think you are not conceited, it means you are very conceited indeed. But the thing with humility is that it's actually harnessed to our intentions. If we are to love God or our neighbour, we must look outside of ourselves. But it can be a little bit tricky. We might act humbly to honour God, or to have the exuberance of thinking, by Jove, I'm being humble. Screwtape, so this is from the Screwtape letter, knows that pride begins to grow inside what would otherwise be a work done for God. And Lewis explains through the character of Screwtape that when humility bends back to reflect on our state, it's not humility at all. You must therefore conceal from the patient the true end of humility. Screwtape says, let him think of it not as self-forgetfulness, but as a certain kind of opinion, namely a low opinion, of his own talents and character. That's the other conundrum with humility. Humility is really dying to self, not thinking you are not worth anything. If you harbour a low opinion of yourself, it's actually quite self-centred and sinful. Romans 12 says, don't cherish exaggerated ideas of yourself or your importance, but try to have a sane estimate of your capabilities by the light of the faith that God has given to you all. It's about verse 13 or something, I think. And I think some are figuring out, having a sane estimate of your capabilities, some are figuring that out, is by listening to the trusted voices in your life. People who will give you honest feedback. What others say your strengths are usually has the ring of truth. The beginning of humility for us is having an understanding of our true identity as an image bearer of God and connecting to the story of restoration, knowing that our days are numbered for doing good works. The wise man, he is self-controlled and not rash. Going to look at his temperament. Self-control, has a calm spirit, he is slow to become angry. Jesus calls us as disciples to learn self-control, and is a fruit of the Spirit. As Peter outlines in 2 Peter 1, 5-9, that it's actually part of the steps of growth. For this very reason, make every effort to add to your faith goodness, and to goodness knowledge, and to knowledge self-control, to self-control perseverance, and to perseverance godliness, and to godliness mutual affection, and to mutual affection love. For if you possess these qualities in increasing measure, they will keep you from being ineffective and unproductive in your knowledge of our Lord Jesus Christ. Whoever does not have them is nearsighted and blind, forgetting that they have been cleansed from their past sins. Fostering self-control is very difficult. As we're told, you can have what you want when you want it in our culture today. It tells us that it's all about freedom and unlimited choice. Developing self-control hurts and often requires denial of self. It takes consistency and discipline. Some of us, myself included, struggle with discipline and consistency. I once determined to have a quiet time for 100 days. There was a series I was reading, and it took so much effort and mental concentration that I did have a quiet time for 100 days, but I was so exhausted afterwards I didn't have one for about 100 days after that. You've got to learn how to work. My advice is to focus on the formation of character rather than self-control as a goal to be achieved. Focus on progress. Don't beat yourself up about failures. We're not who we want to be, but we're not who we were. We're becoming new people through the habits and practices we place in our lives. We are the summation of our repeated practices and rituals. Humans are not made, we are formed by our habits. Being calm in spirit extends from a confidence that God is in control, regardless of the circumstances. You can weather the storm. You can respond to situations rather than react impulsively. This is also the thing about being slow to anger. Anger in itself is not evil, and even anger in the spirit of the moment is not evil. On New Year's Eve in 2008, Ron Barassi, I don't know, he's a famous AFL player, he was 72 and he was assaulted when he instinctively went to the aid of a young woman in St Kilda. Barassi was dining with friends, saw a woman punched to the ground at a set of traffic lights at around 12:30 a.m. So he went and tackled one of the thugs. He was assaulted by about 3 to 4 men in their 20s. This act was selfless. So sometimes acting impulsively like that in anger is the right thing. We are cautioned to be slow to anger. It is a powerful emotion, and when directed at the things after God's own heart, it's a powerful cause for good. And I think of William Wilberforce in the fight for the abolition of slavery over a couple of decades as kind of a slow burning anger against an injustice. And James really does sum it up in chapter 1, verse 19. My dear brothers and sisters, take note of this. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. A wise man in his actions. He's cautious, not hasty. He thinks before he acts, and he thinks before he speaks. These points really echo the character trait of being self-controlled. But I would like to emphasise again the importance of responding and not reacting. When confronted with a situation which we react strongly to, it's often helpful to begin with questions such as, why am I reacting like this? Why is it bothering me? Lord, help me be discerning. Maybe a truth about ourselves is being revealed. We react because there is often more going on than what is right in front of us. Learning to linger with what provokes you. Learn to linger with what provokes you. You may just find the Spirit of God moving there. Maybe there is a past unresolved hurt, a memory, some unforgiveness. It is good to ask questions of ourselves and spend time in self-examination to work out what is going on. These times provide the opportunity to put into practice these godly attributes, to exercise them, to make them stronger, and to go deeper and analyse ourselves. It is in these moments that we are given the opportunity to mature and grow. He is forgiving, not vindictive. Okay. The wise man, he's patient, concerned about goodwill and peace. He forgives those who wrong him. He is not vindictive. Being patient, don't being hasty about things, pray and wait. Being concerned about goodwill and peace is really important. But being a peacemaker means you need to deal with sin. This can be messy. And I think this particular verse here is really talking about reconciling when you have wronged others. If we're doing all the things mentioned above, all of them, about being self-controlled and slow to anger and all of those sorts of things that I've already talked about, we will go a long way in this regards into not actually offending other people or sinning against them. However, if we do, and sometimes you might find in a disagreement, you have this strong desire, if you feel that you are right, that you do not need to be the first person to apologise. And sometimes we need to give grace to that and recognise that being reconciled is far more important than being right. And sometimes it just takes one person to humble themselves for reconciliation to happen and even a healthy conversation to occur about what was going on. Lastly, one thing I want to emphasise is the need to forgive yourself. I know people in my life that are still carrying things from decades ago. Guilt and shame for things they have blamed themselves for. Maybe you've taken responsibility for something in your past that happened to you that was not your fault. Let it go. Give it to the Father. Stop carrying it, whatever it is. Forgive yourself. And if you need to do this, I cannot emphasise more strongly the need to say this out loud. Ask God to forgive you. Ask God to give you the words. Find a trusted friend and do this with them. People are here to lean on. I'm going to pray.